Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So I came across this story the other day, and well, let me just say before we get into it, we live in a very crazy world whereby people that have protected characteristics attached to them are able to get away with a lot of stuff, right? And that includes, unfortunately, forcing hospitals to do certain things to innocent young kids that may be totally confused and lied to. So trans activists may have found a backdoor to force hospitals to provide sex change surgeries to that of minors. Yeah, that's the kind of story that we're going to be discussing today. So bear with me while I try not to get enraged. A lawsuit filed against the hospital for not providing transgender medical procedures could signal a new approach for LGBTQ activists to try to force medical professionals to affirm gender transitions. Legal experts told the Daily Caller News Foundation. So it's not bad enough that kids are getting puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which we know as, according to science, is not good for the likes of young kids to actually get. It's not good for anybody at whatever age to get, let alone an innocent young kid. If you're an adult and you want to do it, it's your choice. But if you're a child, you can't consent to that sort of stuff being put into your body. And adults should know better than to give it to a young kid. If a kid can't get a tattoo, they should not be getting irreversible hormones and surgeries and everything else that goes along with it. The American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, filed a lawsuit on 14th of Feb on behalf of the 18-year-old Caden Kent, a biological female patient identifying as transgender, arguing that the hospital's policy violated the state's anti-discrimination law by not providing a sex-change mastectomy. They always seem to state the anti-discrimination policy. I swear that policy is a rather interesting policy, don't you think? It's one of those policies that you look at and you're going, well, you can claim pretty much anything is discrimination nowadays if you just state that it's discrimination. I discriminated against this person on the basis of whatever. List whatever you want. That's what it's pretty much about. So you can't really have a policy nowadays that actually protects you, because if someone claims that you've discriminated against them, well, can you really prove it? It's hard to prove it, because if you said no to something that is going to affect you medically and it's going to have a life-changing effect on you, if you go, oh, they discriminated against me, they broke the Anti-Discrimination Act or law by not giving this to me, what legal ground does the medical profession have if the person especially is underage, or this person happens to be 18 years old, considered an adult, but you can't drink in the US until you're 21. That's another interesting thing. So they went against what a adult wanted. And now they're claiming that this Caden Kent is accusing them of discrimination by not giving Caden a mastectomy. Legal experts who spoke to the DCNF said this argument may come up in more cases as hospitals are penalized for refusing to provide sex change procedures, and may take it as high as the Supreme Court in time. Just exactly what I said before. Like, you can claim they've breached the Anti-Discrimination Act or law. So it doesn't really protect you, does it? More a loophole. Big time. Sarah Parshall Perry, a senior legal fellow with the Edmund Mezzi III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation, told the DCNF that activists in other states will follow the ACLU's lead an attempt to argue that the expanded categories of discrimination law to include sexual orientation and gender identity protect their right to transgender procedures. That's problematic, isn't it? Looks like a lot of these states and lawmakers have shot themselves in the foot. You let the fox into the hen house, what do you think happens? They start eating. Exactly what they're doing. And it's like with anything. If you find a loophole with it, people are going to run with it. And there's loopholes with pretty much everything, I'll have you know. You just got to look for it. These people have found it because lawmakers allowed it. First of all, Colorado's Anti-Discrimination Act is going to keep coming up because they have done two things. They've not only expanded the definition of sex to include gender identity or expression, and essentially created new categories of protected individuals under state law. I love this whole notion of protected individuals. It just fascinates me. Like they're significantly protected, but us that are, you know, living in reality and sanity and believe in science and whatever, we're not protected at all. We're not protected individuals. We've got no right, no say whatsoever. But these people, they've got all the protection under state law, evidently. But they also expanded the notion of public accommodations under state law as well, Partial Perry said. So how about that? The ACLU's argument relies heavily on the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, CADA, which prohibits discrimination based on gender identity and disability in a place of public accommodation, meaning the hospital. The lawsuit claims that gender dysphoria limits one or more of Kent's major life activities. Look, if you got gender dysphoria, it's been diagnosed through rigorous, testing procedures and seeing multiple different psychologists that aren't woke and aren't broke in the head, then, okay, you've got gender dysphoria that's legitimate, just like body integrity disorder, which is a legitimate mental health condition. So if you're an adult, let's look at what we can do for you. Not give you surgery, not give you puppy blockers, but let's look at giving you a healthy bunch of practices that you can accommodate into your own life that is going to actually help you and not chop off anything of your body that you may end up regretting later on in life. And therefore, the hospital's decision not to treat Kent is in violation of the CADA. I think the hospital did the right thing. That's my personal opinion. I think the hospital, is in a great deal of strife now because they did the right thing. But alas, if you do the right thing nowadays, it's like you've done the wrong thing, evidently, because the law says to you, shouldn't have done that. You're going to get sued and you're probably going to lose for not doing what this person wanted, which according to them is the right thing. The CADA is the same law at the center of two prominent Supreme Court cases, 303 Creative LLC versus LNS and Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado. Who comes up with these court names? Man. Which both dealt with the ability of businesses to express their beliefs on gender and sexuality. Ilya Shapiro, director of constitutional studies at the Manhattan Institute, told the DCNF that the ACLU's case would not be about the fight of a business owner to speak freely, but instead a battle of the experts to determine whether hospitals must provide transgender services. It's going to be interesting to watch it all unfold. The question is going to be, is the ACLU's framing that the hospital will perform these surgeries for cancer but not gender dysphoria correct, or the framing that it's healthy tissue versus diseased tissue? Shapiro said, if there is no discriminatory motive, such as the hospital won't treat people who identify as transgender or non-binary, regardless of gender identity, but instead the hospital treats people with all gender identities, the courts are going to have to take expert testimony and make a decision whether the hospital is being reasonable. So if a person wants to identify as being non-binary or transgender and they go to the hospital, hey, you need to give me the surgery, and the hospital goes no, then, well, the transgender or the non-binary person can claim discrimination based upon that fact. So how about that, man? And the hospital has to somehow prove that it wasn't discrimination, but it's kind of hard to do that because this person has claimed that they are transgender and non-binary. So the hospital can go, oh, but it wasn't about that. It has to be about healthy tissue on the body versus disease tissue. It has to be about all these other reasons the hospital's got to try and prove that they didn't discriminate, that they actually did the right thing, they made the right choice. I mean, what kind of world are we living in, man, where if a person wants to chop off their healthy body parts and the hospital says no, the hospital's wrong for doing the right thing? Wow. The hospital's duty to not discriminate is not the same as a duty to provide affirmative gender-affirming care, Partial Perry told the DCNF, and noted that more hospitals would likely adopt policies like Colorado's Children's as time goes on, promoting more lawsuits. So, according to Partial Perry, gender-affirming care, as the terminology goes, if that is not provided by a hospital, it's not considered do no harm. It's not under those guidelines because apparently providing gender-affirming care to somebody that doesn't actually need gender-affirming care at all, if you don't provide it, you're not doing a duty of care. But if you do provide it, you're providing the duty of care. But in reality, it really does break down the do no harm principle and Hippocratic oath that you've taken as a doctor and as all hospitals operate. You have a duty of care to this person to do no harm to them. The problem is, under the gender affirmative care notion, you have a duty of care to provide this butchery and this madness to a young person, even though you may think that it's wrong. Wow. So Shapiro said that if the court rules in favor of the ACLU, hospitals may find it hard to resist performing transgender medical procedures, even if they feel it is dangerous. Just what I said a moment ago. As a result, more medical professionals and hospitals who do not want to perform sex change medical procedures may be forced to file lawsuits of their own in the coming or in the future, according to Partial Perry. The courts are currently weighing a similar case from the American College of Pediatricians and the Catholic Medical Association, who sued the Department of Health and Human Services in 2021 after it announced that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and discrimination on the basis of gender identity was prohibited. We've got a court case at the moment, Tickle versus Giggle in Australia, going through our highest court. And it's really trying to prove whether or not gender identity actually has merit in society, where a biological man can say that he is a woman and that is enough in our society, according to the law. So if a man can say that he is a woman, that really just removes the definition of woman for real women everywhere. It's just, it's absurd if you ask me. So the plaintiffs argue that a new rule would compel doctors to violate their religious faith by requiring them to perform transgender procedures or face penalties for their refusal. So if you are a person of faith and you believe this goes against your religious convictions, what does that actually say in terms of your right to that? Because I thought that the Discrimination Act protects people on the basis of not just one's sexual identity, but one's religious beliefs too. So there's a bit of a conflict going on. So if one's religious belief goes against one's gender identity belief, which one is going to outweigh the other? Oh, the stalemate of the century. Who would have thought? You know, religion going against one's gender identity. One was made up and the other one is actually legitimate and real. So, and that's according to science, by the way. We have a spiritual understanding and a spiritual core to every single one of us. As humans, we have souls. We don't need to get into another rabbit hole into that, but I'm just pointing out the facts here. So it could be a rather interesting case, if you ask me. Which one's going to outweigh the other? The case was dismissed by a lower court and then appealed in January to the US Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. So it goes to every state has a different Court of Appeals, as I found out. And if it fails in the Court of Appeals, then I'm not sure what happens after that. But you may be able to go to the Supreme Court if you end up getting that far, but we'll see. Both Shapiro and Marshall Perry said that the ACLU's case could make its way to the Supreme Court eventually. Funny how I just keep saying these things and ends up being part of the. I haven't read that far yet, believe it or not. So there you go. But Shapiro told the DCNF that cases like these face a high bar in order to succeed. It's a matter of standard of care, and courts are going to have to take an expert testimony. Who's an expert in this case? And what's to say that that expert doesn't have personal bias? And make a decision whether the hospital is being reasonable or if there's proof of an improper motive. Good luck proving that. Good luck. Shapiro said there's not much due prejudice on this, but without an improper motive, it's a higher bar the challengers face, particularly if there is still other hospitals that are willing to do this kind of surgery that are available to the patient. The ACLU in Colorado's Children's Hospital did not respond to the DCNF's request for comment. So to round this out, it seems rather intriguing to me how you're going to actually prove one thing from the next. Whether it's considered prejudice to discriminate against somebody, or whether or not faith is going to rule in favor. Who knows? Like, honestly, who knows what's going to happen? But I really do believe that lawmakers have shot themselves in the foot big time, and we've got significant issues as a result of all of it. They're finding loopholes and just running with them at the moment. Really absurd. And hopefully that these trans activists don't actually win. Because if they do win, God help the kids. Honestly, God help the kids. Anyway, my friends, thank you all so much for watching. You take care. You be blessed. And I'll see you all in the next video.